Powered by Red Media in partnership with TSN, it is Season 6 of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Tim Hortons. The iconic duo just got a lot more iconic. Get a classic donut for $1 when you order any size original or dark roast coffee. You can choose from an apple fritter, Boston cream, honey cruller, old-fashioned plain. Chocolate dip is a favorite. Vanilla dip, really, really strong. Classic way to enjoy your coffee. And, you know, you needed that extra large black Tim Hortons coffee. What? Second quarter, the Super Bowl, Eagles and Chiefs. I mean, with all due respect, I don't think anybody would have been shocked that the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Kansas City Chiefs and halted history, right? But to see them absolutely mop the field with Mahomes and the Chiefs, I didn't see that coming. Ray, how about you?
That was a dismantling. Like, that was holy smokes, that was not even close. I don't think a Timmy's was going to get you through that. I told you yesterday. I got home yesterday about noon, and I'm leaving tomorrow for Four Nations. And the best part of that game was in the second half. I was able to do some stuff because there was no point in watching anymore. It was like, holy man, that must have been a long afternoon. Like, I was looking at one point, there was like 7 or 8 minutes left in the third quarter, and I'm like, oh my God, these guys got to play like another 23 minutes. And they don't have a chance. Like, it's done, it's finished.
Yeah.
And that's a long afternoon, man.
We won't spend a lot of time on a halftime show because I don't think anybody watching or listening to the Ray and Dregs podcast really cares what we think of Kendrick Lamar or anything related to halftime or football. But you, in our preamble here, gave me some perspective. You know, I think of the iconic names and stars, megastars, who have done halftimes over the years. Michael Jackson in '93. Of course, he had the wardrobe malfunction, right? With Janet Jackson. And Justin Timberlake. The Stones, Paul McCartney, Prince, U2, Lady Gaga, Springsteen, Madonna, all of that. And I'm watching Kendrick Lamar. And, I appreciate the spectacle and the creativity and the theater and everything that goes into it, but I'm not getting it. And then you said, it's probably not for you, right?
It's not. My boys, who were 18 and 15, had some buddies over. They were down in the basement watching, and they thought it was great. They loved it. And they know all the songs. They're, it's like it's their generation, right, is listening to this. And there's going to be a time we're going to be like the Simpsons grandpa, if we already aren't. And you're going to be like, oh, this noise, I can't listen to this noise. And everybody else around us is going to love it. And that like Kendrick is one of the world's most popular artists, right?
No, for sure.
Like, he rolls his tour through North America, and it's sellout after sellout. Like, he's a young guy who is just exploded. And so like I said, my kids thought it was awesome. I was like, I know like 3 of the songs because I listened to them on driving them on the way to school. But I was, it was good. It was fine.
Yeah, it's fine. And the Drake feud continues, right?
Yeah, and they thought it was great. Yeah, and they thought it was great. So
it's all that matters.
I think they hit the target they wanted.
Yeah, it seems so, because it certainly was over my head, too much of it anyway. Although more entertaining than the football game. So that's one positive. All right, let's get into the Tim Hortons headlines. And as you say, you're home and making your way to Montreal and the Four Nations face-off. We're recording this episode of Ray and Dregs 10:42 a.m. Eastern, Monday morning. So Canada is going to hit the ice shortly here, and Sidney Crosby, we know, is in Montreal. So we await that decision. So if this is dated when you're listening to the podcast, you'll know whether Sid is in or Sid is out. And as you and I talked, Ray, like, it does make some sense knowing the character of Sidney Crosby. He's not putting himself ahead of the country. If he doesn't feel like he's going to give this thing a real shot, and maybe he isn't ready for game one, takes a bit more time to let his issue resolve, heal, whatever. Well, that's a different conversation. And why
Right.
wouldn't you want to sit around, right? With all due respect to Mark Scheifele, why wouldn't you?
Well, to pick the team, if it's a different player, maybe it's a different discussion. But it's Sid. He deserves the opportunity to make his own call on this, and he also is, I think, as clear-headed a guy as as we've. I'm going to say as we've seen. I'm sure that's maybe that's not the right statement, but like there's just a level-headedness to his competitiveness. Like if he can play, he's going to know, and and it may not be Wednesday. So if he doesn't play Wednesday, he's got till Saturday night.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that may be all the time he needs. Like we're going to get into a couple other players that obviously felt Wednesday to Saturday was not going to be enough.
Yeah.
And so they're out. And so, and that sucks for the tournament because they're really terrific players. But if Crosby can go Saturday, I think he stays. If he doesn't really feel it, then Mark Scheifele's the next guy, I assume. And and in fairness to Mark, like you can't ask him to sit at home for 5 days of his vacation and go, wait a minute, I could be somewhere either at home or somewhere warm. And by the way, if you wanted to see an NHL player, the place to see them would have been at an airport yesterday because
How bad.
they're on the move and they're like because they're not in the tournament. And so I hope Sid can play. I really do. I love the thought of watching him again in a Canadian jersey, and I'm sure he'll give it the best crack he can.
And look, there's a business element to this, not that it really matters in the grand scheme of things, but he's a spectacle, right? And the league and the Players Association, obviously every Canadian fan, us included, that's one of the points of primary interest for me in the Four Nations face-off is seeing all these great players that we haven't seen come together on the international stage.
Yeah, okay, so this is like the little kid in me. You know what I'm really looking forward to is when the players get their jerseys, and I'm hoping there's a couple duplicate numbers because then somebody has to change numbers. And I don't know why I've always been fascinated by that. I used to love it in the All-Star game when they had just one set of jerseys, like, and you wouldn't have two number 15s or whatever, and it would be a star wearing a weird number. I love that stuff. I just think
how do you
so
resolve it? Is it like games played in the NHL? Like how do you?
Seniority for sure. Yeah. And I don't know. I just love that stuff. And seeing guys in new uniforms and a centerman playing left wing, and we're gonna watch the coaches try and figure out the lineups, and
oh boy,
and it will be really fun to watch. I look forward to it.
We alluded to it, but as we know, Quinn Hughes of the Vancouver Canucks removed himself from the event. Won't be going. Jake Sanderson of the Ottawa Senators is the replacement for Team USA. We know Drew Doughty has been named as a replacement for Alex Pietrangelo on Team Canada. And I don't know if it was Dollywall or who had the quote from Pat Brisson, but that really resonates with me. And I don't have it in front of me, but in essence, what he's saying is how difficult a decision this was for Quinn, because he's never backed away from a challenge at any point of his young life career. But in this case, he's doing it as you'd expect, again, from a high character family, just purely because of what's at stake from the Canucks standpoint. You come back from the Four Nations, final leg of the regular season, you got to lock down that playoff spot, and then away you go. So that matters. I don't want to say more. I mean, it's pretty obvious. That's what led to his decision. But a real tough one for a player who historically has loved representing his country.
For sure it is. And, a couple of weeks ago, Alex Pietrangelo said in Vegas, look, I can play, but I need time off. I need to heal. And I did the Vegas game. By the way, Vegas is good.
Ugh.
They were at the tail end of their road trip,
Yeah.
and they were they got down in Boston 3-1, and then they just steamrolled the game. It was like impressive to watch. So anyway, Pietrangelo played 22 minutes or whatever, and he's not playing. So the comment was made, at the end of the day, you got to be true to the team that's paying you, the team that is your livelihood, and you are such an
Yeah.
important factor for. And quite frankly, I mean that's a really hard decision in the middle of a year, but it's fact. Fact of the matter is, and so Quinn is out and Pietrangelo's out, and again, it sucks for the tournament, and it would have been awesome, I'm sure, for Quinn to play with his brother and to play with the Tkachuks, who they're so closely tied, and it's just it's a lousy
Yeah.
thing, and he needs the 10 days, and he'll come back and be ready to go.
How confident are you, Ray, that the Four Nations is going to be a super competitive tournament?
I had never given it any thought, and then I got asked a couple of weeks ago, and it made me, for the first time, Dregs, go, "Oh, really? They wouldn't bail on this, would they?" I don't think they will. I think that it'll be competitive enough just at the start. I mean, you wear your country's jersey. For a lot of guys, this will be part of a rehearsal and tryout to see about next year's Olympics. The other thing is, if it's not, can you imagine what it's going to sound like in the Bell Center? They'll get the hint in a hurry.
Oh, yes.
Like, and rightfully so, I might add. So I think if you agree to play in this tournament, if you agree to play for your country, I don't think there's, in my mind, any question. Look, I covered the World Championships for years, and this is a tournament in the middle of May with a bunch of players that are out of the playoffs, and nobody's mailing that in. And so I think it's a question to ask, but not one to be worried about.
Well, and something, there'll be a hit here that maybe, gets the juices going, but these guys are so high skilled. The execution is going to be top notch. So with that in mind, discipline obviously becomes a primary focus too for every club, right? Like
Sure.
the hockey side matters.
Yeah. Well, as soon as we talk about the competitiveness, I keep thinking back to the 96 one, and it was just savagery. And I don't think it's going to be that, because the game's not that. I mean, like there's the one piece of footage where Keith Tkachuk and Adam Foote are going at it, and at the end of it, Tkachuk turns around and takes a baseball swing at him and hits him right across the pants. And I'm like, I can't believe that. Like that, could you even imagine that happening? And the answer is no, it's not going to. But I think it will be really great hockey. I will be both disappointed and surprised if it's not.
All right, well, let's go over to the standings for a moment. Now, the Washington Capitals go into the Four Nations break second overall behind the Winnipeg Jets in the National Hockey League. OV's march to the goal-scoring record is steady and strong. We've seen that. Washington has 0 players involved in the Four Nations. So does that even matter? I mean, is this just a great opportunity for a full team recharge, or just kind of a sidebar sort of story to all of this?
I think it's closer to a sidebar, but I think it's really interesting that, here's one of the best teams in the league and they don't have anybody in the tournament. I think that's really kind of bizarre. It's not a very hard argument to say Logan Thompson should be there, but he's not. And so they can rest. They also don't have any possibility or worry that somebody's going to come back hurt, that the other teams do. And is it an advantage? Maybe for Ovi. I mean, the guy's 40 or 39, whatever. And right. So maybe it's an advantage for him. But for the most part, I think, other than the break, Dregs, these guys are wiped. I mean, I don't know what you think the hockey's looked like the last 3 weeks, but it's looked like they're exhausted. It looks like they're gassed. And so I think that in that frame, it's a positive for them. The other thing I've heard more than a few times is as much physically, these guys need a break, man. Mentally, they're washed, and the games have just been piled up. Like there's been no coach we talk to that says, "Oh yeah, our guys are rested." Not one. Everybody's like,
No.
"We haven't practiced in 3 weeks."
Yeah.
Like, and so like this break for a lot of players comes quite nicely.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it. I think the Florida Panthers, what do they have, 7 or 8 guys there?
Mm-hmm.
All the hockey that Florida has played over the last 3+ seasons, and no practice time. But what are you going to do? I mean, you just roll with it and you pray to the hockey gods that nobody gets hurt in the Four Nations. And let's go. We're back in the ice, back in the regular season 2 days.
I think this is an advantage Paul Maurice has too, is that he's coached since it seems like the beginning of time, and
Yeah.
he's when we get the chance to speak with him, everything is just very matter of fact with him. There's no real highs and lows, and the way he's coached his team this year, he's not overloaded anybody. Right, nobody's playing 28 minutes a game. No, they just kind of roll their 3.5 lines as much as they can, and they're definitely coaching and playing for the long run, not for trying to win a President's Trophy or something like that.
Right. So Chris Johnson tweeted out a couple of minutes ago here. Team Canada lines at Four Nations practice: Reinhart, McDavid, Marner, Stone, Crosby, McKinnon, Jarvis, Point, Marchand, Hagel, Cirelli, Bennett. So there's your 12 forwards. Taves, Makar, Theodore, Doughty, Morrissey, Parayko, and Sanheim. And then Hill, Bennington, Montembeault. So he's in a top 6 spot right now.
Yeah, the one thing I'm really
Konechny is sick, by the way. I should have said there's 13. Travis Konechny not on the ice. He's ill. So there you go.
Okay, you know what my only thing, I'm really interested to see a bunch of that stuff, but I'm curious how Marner and McDavid play together.
Yeah.
Because they're both such unbelievable puck handlers and need the puck to create what they do. And so that's one of the things of the tournament that is so cool. It's like, how do they fit? Like, they don't know yet even, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't know. Like, I mean, the players, they all know each other, but they've never really played anything together. And so that's really kind of cool. And I mean, Reinhart, he gets the puck, he gives it up, and he goes and scores. And so, like, he's a good fit with any of those guys. But that's the first thing that is, that jumps out at me, I guess.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to stop being a Debbie Downer, because I wouldn't say correct people, but I acknowledge that it isn't best on best, right? It isn't.
Right.
And now I'm going to. And we know why. I mean, there's Four Nations, and Leon Draisaitl isn't there, and David Pastrnak, all the great NHL players whose countries aren't participating. I get that. Russia, all of that. I understand. So I'm not going to talk about that anymore. Although I do want to talk about Leon Draisaitl as we wrap up the Tim Hortons headline. 40 goals in 55 games, all right? So his career best is 55 goals in 80 games. So does he get there? And I guess what I'm wondering by there is, can he score 20 in the 27 remaining Oilers games to hit 60? Or do you just look at 50 and not? Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah,
I think he can.
So, like, his consistency of excellence is really remarkable to watch.
Yeah,
and most guys that score, they also have the little bonus that when their power plays on the ice, it's really dangerous, right? Like, you don't score a lot of goals without a lot of power play goals or a lot of power play opportunity. And Leon gets that, and he's one of the game's best shooters too. So I don't see him going into a dry spell. I really don't. I mean, he's having an amazing year. And when you get to these numbers, how's he not going to score 15 goals in 25 games?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, he's got 40 and 55. So yeah, I think he'll get a career high, and I think he's going to be right at 58, 59, 60 by the time this is over.
Beautiful. All right. Those are your headlines. Thank you to our great partners at Tim Hortons. Time for Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. You can send us your questions on X and Instagram at Ray and Dregs, or on the website, rayanddregs.com. Ask Ray and Dregs is brought to you by Aecon. Aecon is a North American construction leader and proud to be one of Canada's original industrial contractors. They're building some of the largest multi-year industrial projects in Western Canada. And hey, you can be a part of it. They're looking for skilled tradespeople and construction pros to join the Aecon team and start building what matters today. Join Aecon by sending your resume to trades@aecon.com. TSN's Ryan Rashog is in Montreal, Ray. He's working for TSN. He's doing all the coverage there, along with, I guess, Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnson. I don't arrive until Friday.
Oh,
but
the
I
big
will
hitter
have
coming in Friday.
I have my collection of Delta pens. You've already warned me. They've packed away in my bag. So once again, we've got Chris Sabunia here, who did a wonderful job last week in hosting Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. So Zuby is back. Good to see you again. Zub, how was your weekend?
It was good. A couple hockey games with my son out in West Kelowna, and
Ooh, nice.
And the Super Bowl here, a little bit of a disappointment, but not that I had a rooting interest, but I was hoping it might be a game that wasn't made to be turned off as quickly as it was.
Your kid's not a goalie like you, is he?
He's not, actually, to the contrary.
Good for him.
He doesn't want, he hasn't even, he'll put the pads on playing mini sticks in the basement, but he has skipped over his turn that's come up on the ice on a couple of times. He says, Dad, I don't want to. I don't force him. Yeah, I don't force him. I think he's kind of got a bit of a knack for it, but he does not want to do it in a game. So he might still come around. We'll see.
Come around. Yeah.
All right, Zuby, what do you got for us, brother?
Yeah. Let's get to it. Okay. This is from Tate in Calgary. He says, early in the season, the Calder Trophy race seemed to be Macklin, Celebrini, and then everybody else. But I'm liking how Lane Hudson and Dustin Wolf have closed the gap. Does a clear top three with a forward, a D, and a goalie make this one of the more interesting races in recent history? And who do you think is the front runner right now?
I think it's testament to how long a season is and how hard it is to excel. Matvei Michkov was, at the start of the year had run out. And now it seems like there's some kind of fatigue with him, and then it goes to Celebrini, and now Hudson's kind of been on the outside track the whole way because. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It just feels like he's on the outside of it, except his points tell you that you have to look at him, that you have to consider him. And then, I don't know what Calgary thought they had in Dustin Wolf, like if they thought he could be this good as he has been. But if indeed the race is those three, I do think it makes it different, or it makes it interesting, but difficult because they each are going to do something so much different. And it's going to be hard to compare. Like, one of the things you've got to take into mind is Celebrini is playing for a terrible hockey team. Like, it's not very good. And it's like you look down their box score. If they've got 3 goals, he's on the board.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing what he's been able to do with a team that's clearly just hitting the bottom of their rebuild. Now they're trying to start this. They're now at the point they're starting to add all these young guys, but they got a long way to go there. But that I think it'll be really interesting. I really do. I think it's a good race.
I do too, and it's important to note how many games are left in the regular season here too, right? And to Ray's point, I would have Macklin Celebrini as the front runner. I mean, that's somewhat obvious with all due respect to the other guys. But San Jose is not getting better between now and the 7th of March. I mean, Mike Greer is going to continue to move out pieces there. And then you've got more hockey to get played after the trade deadline. So it's going to be tough, but I think you need a special performance or multiple performances out of Dustin Wolf as Calgary tries to, hold their spot and claw their way up to the cut line in the West. And Lane Hudson, again, the workload matters too, right? And that's why I reference a number of games that still have to be played. So I think there's still some fight in this race. It's not a handover to Max Celebrini just yet.
Okay, we got Davy Jones on Twitter. I'm not sure that's a person's actual name, but we appreciate the submission on Twitter.
You never know.
And he says, any insight on what is happening or will happen with Brock Boeser? Showed top end last year, but the team is thinking it's a one-off or what he's actually capable of? Now, I noted that Brock Boeser's not on the TSN trade bait top 30, but he's an expiring contract on a borderline playoff team. So what does the future hold for him and for this asset for the Vancouver Canucks?
Well, I can tell you that, as soon as that direction is made clearer, then we'll happily put Brock Boeser on the trade bait graphic. They've had so much going on, obviously, around the Vancouver Canucks that, with all due respect to Brock Boeser, he's kind of like his contract status is probably lower down the priority list. But that's not to say that they're not going to engage with him. I think you have to do the dance and find out, what his plan is. Does he want to engage? And a big part of it has to do, frankly, with the future of Rick Tocchet as head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. Because Tocchet seems to have meshed with Boeser. At least that's what the Boeser camp says. So this one, unfortunately, we don't have a clear-cut answer to. It's to be determined.
I do find it interesting always that when, and I live in Vancouver, right? So the noise around here is, they haven't had meaningful talks and they haven't, they got to this guy and they traded for Pettersson and they signed him right away. And so if the team's view is we got to deal with this big mess first, which is clearly Pettersson and Miller in the trade, then that was the first thing. Then they just make this trade. I think the Pettersson contract was a pretty easy one to get done.
Yeah.
If, I don't know. Well, I do know where these numbers get floated around, like out into if he's looking for 8 years and $8 million a year, well, then they've got a problem.
Yeah.
Because it's such a long term for a player. And I would say a player that is almost quietly beloved in Vancouver. He's like a super popular player here, both with his teammates and with the fans. Like there's not a thing to pick apart, but if you were going to find one, it would be, what is his foot speed going to look like in 5 years? And you can't say, even though lots do, we'll worry about the back end of the contract. The cap's going up all the time now.
Not the way it works.
It does not work like that. I'm sure people are aware that the Canadian dollar is not exactly at 90 cents. So there's huge economic considerations to a deal to a player that you would want to sign. If it wasn't economically concerning, you would want to sign them like yesterday. Yeah. And so that they've all got that number got floated out, the 8 times 8, and it wasn't an accident. And that's almost like a test balloon. And that floats over to the Canucks, and then they got to figure out when they bat the balloon back, they've got to figure out how they bat it back. I mean, that's really, Dregs, you know this better than all of us. I mean, that's really how it works, right? It does. It comes from one side or the other, and it's a trial balloon. And it goes poof, either from the team to the player or player to the team, and it just gets lobbed out there.
Yeah, and that's where they're at. Like 100%. And what makes it even that much more intriguing is the March 7th trade deadline, right? And if it's a number, this happens with every club, not just Vancouver, but if that number is a number that you're not going to be able to negotiate down, then Brock Boeser will be on the TSN trade bait board, but not quite yet.
Well, we don't need any bigger example about the number and whether you can negotiate it than the reason that Mikko Rantanen wears red and white in Carolina. Like there's no bigger example than that.
No.
Okay, last one, something a little fun here. One of my favorite hockey bloopers is Alain Vigneault cracking up on the bench after Vern Fiddler did his Kevin Bieksa impression.
That's a really good one, yeah.
Have either of you ever had a moment in broadcasting where you got a case of the giggles and just couldn't get it back on the rails? This is from Ian T. in Vancouver.
Well, I can think of two. One with Gord and one with Chris Cuthbert. So the one with Gord was I had been begging him there was a player for Hungary in the World Championships, and his name was Bence Stipshits. And so we went to their coaches and said, and Gord asked them, he's like, Stip Sheets? And they're like, no, Stip Shits. And he's like, so it became clear this is the guy's name. And so in the tournament, I had to do 3 games in one day. Gord had the middle game off because play-by-play, of course, talks much more during the broadcast. So I was begging him. It was 3rd game of the day, and I wanted him to say Stip Shits with a soft dump in the corner. And he wouldn't do it. And so I said, if you don't do it, I'm going to leave with 5 minutes left. And he's like, what are you talking about? So it came to 5 minutes, and I told our producer, I go, it's my 3rd game. I'm tired. And I just started packing up my bag. I couldn't even look at him because I was dying laughing. And when he realized that I was leaving, and so he had to do the first 5 minutes or last 5 by himself. It was so funny. The one with Cuthbert, Chris is like, him and Gord are just like brilliant broadcasters. Chris he's this far all the time from losing everything, like his pens, paper, books. It's like he's a mess. Anyway, so we're in Anaheim. He's got to do one of those promo reads during the game. And Scott Lennox, who's a producer for Sportsnet, he was the stats guy at the time. So Chris is in the middle, I'm on the right, Scott's on the left. And the producer says, Chevy read on the whistle. So we can see right away he's looking for his papers. He doesn't have it. He doesn't know where it is. Now, Lennox and I are starting to giggle, and Cuthbert's still digging away at this stuff. And he's doing the game, right? At the same time. Pretty soon, he's down on one knee. He's had a click in his brain. He threw it in the garbage. So he took the game to the stoppage on one knee, and glove save by Jaguar. And then he pulls this paper out of the garbage. It's got coffee on it. And he reads the Chevy truck ad. And he stands up, fixes his mic, like he always does, fixes his mic. He's like, oh, there we go, sir. Yep. And then he starts and he moves along. We couldn't even speak. Scotty was turned and facing the wall. And the broadcast goes on, but it's like it's impossible to get through it. It was so good.
I get a couple similar stories. One involves James Doughty, the other one, Nabil Kareem. So both hosting games in Studio 6 at TSN. I can't remember the player was a defenseman, and James Doughty is doing highlights during second intermission or whatever. And this defenseman makes a real solid defensive play. But it did not come out in the highlight the way that James intended, because the guy fends off the forward with one arm. And so rather than say, oh, look at this play, defenseman fends a guy off with one arm, James said, rather than fends, beats.
Yeah.
Do I really have to fill in the game?
Well,
so, fends him off.
Yeah.
With one arm.
With one arm. Yeah. And oh my God. I think Bobby Mack were on there together. And I don't think this might be pre-O-Dog. We were killing ourselves laughing. And
James wouldn't have known, right? Did he know when he said it?
Oh yeah, he knew. Yeah, he knew it. He was like, "Oh no."
Well, you've heard. Sorry to jump in. You've heard. If you haven't, you can look it up on YouTube. Darren Pang.
Yes.
Welcome back inside in Chicago. Here we look at whoever the St. Louis player so and so beats Chris Chelios.
Yeah.
And as he gets to Chelios' name, Panger starts to giggle, which doesn't make. It's not hard for Panger to giggle, but
no.
He starts to giggle. You got to look this one up. It's really fantastic. Same thing though. Yeah.
I love it. And the other one with Nabil, we were doing a regional Ottawa Senators game, and he had to do that read. You're talking about the Chevy read. He had to do a Scotiabank read. And he was, it's probably his first, in studio hosting gig at TSN. And he's sitting there, he's so focused. He's like, Scotiabank, you're richer than you stink. And it's so stupid. And I just killed myself laughing, and he was so embarrassed. Anyway, that kind of stuff never grows old.
Nope.
I want to tell a quick story about a friend of mine who, Rob Hislop. He was one of the. He was a weekend anchor and sports guy and reporter at CFRN in Edmonton, and in the evenings, whoever was the reporter or the anchor that was doing the late night news had to do a couple live cut-in updates throughout the evening. And there was an incident at the Fringe in Edmonton where some of the street performers, there was someone who had been shooting street performers with like a little like a BB gun or something like that. But but they were it happened to a couple of people who were dressed as clowns. And Rob Hislop had to do this live update saying that all clowns had been ordered out of the streets because of this second instance.
Sorry, I'm just saying. All right, if you're dressed like a clown, please.
But I don't know if he knew the full extent of what was in the prompter. So when he got to that, he starts laughing in the live update. And then he even says, it's this, I know this, he's laughing. He's like, I know this sounds funny, but it's not. And he's got a 30-second live window that's about to close. So then he goes into this thing trying to wrap it up. He goes, but it's very serious and all clowns have been ordered out of the street. And then it just like ended. And then oh my gosh. And then we all just let loose after that. After it was done. That was hilarious.
There's no chance. Okay, so I've never heard this story, Zuby. There's no chance I could get top to bottom in that prompter.
No.
Knowing that you're gonna at the end you're gonna order all clowns out of the street.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry. That's amazing. That's so good.
It was fabulous.
It reminds me of WKRP.
With the turkeys.
God is my witness.
I would say one of the most famous ones is Steve Levy, and a player was out with a bulging disc.
Oh no!
And so it's again, you can YouTube it. He goes, and so and so is out with a bulging. He was out with a bulging dick, and his anchor or his co-anchor off stage goes, "Oh, that's gonna hurt." they of course,
there's a million of those, man.
Oh, it's so good.
Good stuff, Zuby.
All right,
that was a good one.
We needed that to get the week going. There he is, Chris Sabunia, pinch hitting for Ryan Richog here.
Okay,
and ask
so
Ray and Dregs anything.
I still can't stop getting the clowns out of the street. Like I don't even know why that just struck me. It's like amazing to think of some guy trying to get through that in 30 seconds. That's so good.
So you can laugh now, but the next 3 hours for you is going to be mayhem before you take off tomorrow, Tuesday, right?
I got a list. It's going to take about 2 days, and I'm on a 9 a.m. flight tomorrow, so not happening. So it's time to get at it. And then
you can only do what you can do, my friend. Yeah.
Yep. 5 days in Montreal. Love it. Going to have some good dinners and see some great hockey and get my Delta pens. Thanks very much, Drake. Look forward to it.
All right, buddy. I look forward to seeing you, and we'll catch up here on Ray and Dregs later in the week.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for listening, everybody.
And thank you to our sponsors who continue to support Ray and Dregs and make this podcast possible. Our title sponsor, Tim Hortons. And thank you to Acon as well for their weekly contribution to Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. Travel safe, Ray, and till next time, be well, everyone.